Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited that you're here. We have so many people from all over, so I'm super excited. I'm Donnelly from Latinas in Tech, Utah. It is a great honor to be here with all of you. As a brief overview, Latinas in Tech is a nonprofit that reaches the largest network of Latinas in the tech ecosystem. There are over 10,000 members all over the world in London, New York, and Mexico City. We work hand in hand with top technology companies to create safe spaces for learning, mentorship, and recruitment. And we're so excited that you're here. We thank you for your willingness to be a part of our Latinas in Tech journey in Utah. We strongly believe there's a great Latinx talent here in Utah, and we're excited to launch it in this beautiful state. We will gather together as a community and to the Latinas in Tech chapter. Thank you so much. A couple of administrative items. If you are not muted or your camera is on, feel free to put it off if it's not automatically taken off. As well, if there are any questions for the panelists or myself, feel free to put it in the QA or in the chat box, preferably in the QA so we can answer them after the event. As part of our launch and introduction as a chapter, I'd like to introduce you to the Latinas leading the team here in Utah. So first, we have Karen Rodriguez, who leads our Community Partnerships Committee, where she focuses on making connections with organizations that are advancing equity and inclusion in tech. She is the founder and CEO of Code and Color, the marketing director for the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce, and the diversity and inclusion lead officer at Purple, where she oversees all global diversity and inclusion efforts. Then we have Trissa Sarmiento, who leads our communications committee. She focuses on reaching out and creating a flow of communication as an organization with our members. Trissa is the manager of community and client engagement at Bottega, where she focuses on helping people transition into the tech industry. We have Cynthia Jensen, who leads our marketing and events committee, where she focuses on asset and coordination of events such as these. And we're so grateful for all the work she put in. She is the founder and CEO of Create Hut, a digital marketing agency. Cynthia is a director of analytics at Rizhoma, working with crowdsourcing, design thinking, and online marketing. And then there's myself. I am the chair of Women for Latinas in Tech here in Utah, where my sole purpose is to serve our board and members with potential ideas, coordination, and expansion of the organization. I currently head the customer success team at Skillstruck, a K-12 computer science education platform, making computer science accessible for all. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited to have you here, and we're excited to move on with the next part of our kickoff. If you would like to join us in Latinas in Tech overall as an organization, please go into the link on this screen. Or if you're interested in becoming a member for the Utah chapter, please feel free to reach out on that same link and make your profile. As we were pursuing themes and what would be the most interesting and useful at this time, we agreed on the topic of networking skills. The flow of this virtual event will be very casual and natural. A couple of questions for our panelists, QA from our audience, and introductions for some of our amazing partners from local tech companies. We have 4 amazing Latina leaders in tech that have decided to join us today, and we're so grateful that they're here to speak on this topic. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. So ladies, thank you all for joining us. We're honored to have you here and excited for this conversation. As speakers, if you could please, under 1 minute, tell us where you're from, what is your current position, and how did you get there? And we'll start with you, Brittany.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I hope my video's on and everything's working and you can hear me. But my name is Brittany Crystal. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a personal brand expert, host of the Beyond Influential podcast, and I teach entrepreneurs and professionals who have an entrepreneurial mindset like yourselves how to build authentic brands online that allow you to create the results you want in your life and business and do it on your terms. The short version of my story: I have a decade of experience in content strategy and development, but it took a long time to get where I am now. I did not have a linear path. What I do now did not exist when I graduated school. I took the safe route out of college, graduated Georgetown Law School, passed the bar, realized I didn't want to do that. I worked in entertainment, and then I ended up in the marketing field, working with sexy names like Gary Vee in the online personal brand space before starting my own business. But I'm happy to answer any questions for anyone who wants to talk about pivoting or evolving your brand, because I've had to pivot and evolve my personal brand and just as a person several times over the course of my career. But there is really limitless opportunity right now if you are strategic with your brand online. So that is my little intro. I don't know if you guys want me to get into anything else.
No, you're totally good. Thank you so much, Brittany. And we're so excited that you can make the time to be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on to our next panelist, Cynthia Reyes, who's a stock analyst at Netflix.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Like Dolly mentioned, my name is Cynthia Reyes. I was born and raised in Mexico City till I was 9. I've been in the States ever since. I lived most of my life in Utah, just right in Salt Lake City. I currently reside in the Bay Area. I work for Netflix, so I moved out here. My career also, I did not start in finance. I started in interior design, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. So it's just been very different. I never thought I would end up here, but it's been awesome and it's been great, and I've learned so much. And I'm also just very grateful to be here and that Utah finally has this chapter. So exciting.
So happy to have you here, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining us. Netflix is a big employer, so we're excited to learn from you. The next of our panelists is joining us from London. Natalie, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Natalie Marachino, as mentioned, joining you from London, where it's finally stopped raining for a minute. I am originally from Colombia, though my dad's Swiss, so I grew up in Europe and spent the last 21 years in the US, most recently in the Bay Area. I was there for 15 years, but just recently relocated to London to lead the sales team for a small company called Figma. So what we do is collaborative design software. Actually, we're talking very closely with Netflix, among other customers. And reason I joined the company is because I'm really interested in companies that are mission driven, and it's a mission driven company. We try to make design accessible for all. Not everyone has a $5,000 Mac that they can use to create beautiful designs. And so our CEO saw an opportunity to leverage technology to do that. But like Brittany, really a non-traditional background. I actually primarily played sports up until 4 years ago. And so represented the US for about 10 years in rugby after playing basketball in college, and then went to the Olympics with Colombia in 2016, which is coincidentally when I retired, and now I'm focusing in my post-career career. So happy to also answer any questions around anything related to Figma. I love it here. I love the company. Could talk about it for hours, but also pivoting and career decisions, as well as networking, obviously.
That's awesome. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you so much for joining us when it's after hours in London. And rugby, wow, that's a great sport. I wish I had the skills for that. So way to go representing. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Chelsea, who is here in Utah. So excited to have you here, Chelsea.
No, and thank you all so much for having all of us. So I'm Chelsea. I'm originally from Tlalnepantla, Mexico. We moved to the States when I was 2, so I currently reside here in Utah in Vineyard. I'm the design lead for Podium Starter, and I got here through just, lots of sacrifices of, generations past, incredible people that have shared opportunities with me, a really dear group of and network of mentors, and just a lot of really hard work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chelsea. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that a lot of our work is really thanks to people before us, and I'm glad that I have every single one of you here representing the Latina community. So thank you. I'm excited for this topic. So let's start questions and let's get it going. These questions will be addressed to each of you individually, but if one of you have maybe like another opinion on one of these questions, feel free to pitch in. So my first question will be for you, Cynthia. Netflix is a big employer and it's very competitive. So how does one go in attaining a role at a top tech employer like Netflix?
Well, thanks, Donnelly. So that is a big question, right? That's what everyone wants to know and how to get in. But to be completely honest, I don't have all the answers. I don't have like all the tips and tricks on how to get a position at a company like Netflix. But what I can share with all of you is what I did in my experience on how I got here and obtain a position at a company like Netflix. As I was trying to think about this, there are, I think, three main things that that stood out to me throughout my career. And first and foremost is do not be afraid to change course. Like I mentioned earlier, my first degree was in interior design. I love it. I still love it. And I still do it once in a while. But my goal was to have a design firm at one point. So I went back to school for business and marketing. I graduated with a degree in that in hopes of creating this new business, right? But once I graduated, I couldn't find a job. And I think we've all gotten to that point, right? Where it's just like no one would hire me, not in what I wanted. So at the time, my oldest brother was a financial consultant for E-Trade. And he told me to just try it out. It was just supposed to be temporary. My goal was, something else. But oddly enough, I started there. I started in customer service. I was answering phones all day. It was the worst. But I also really found that I liked stock and I liked finance. So I did the work and I put myself through all of that. I became a stockbroker. And within the E-Trade world, I moved into different departments, which landed me in the stock administration world. I didn't even know it existed, but I thought it was interesting, which leads me to my second point, which is networking and mostly just building long-lasting relationships with people. When I started that position at E-Trade, I acquired a book of clients, and I became interested in them. I wanted to know more about their job, and I asked questions. And you'll be surprised how much people are willing to talk. So just ask questions, be interested, build those relationships with people. I was able to find a job that got me into the stock administration world in the business side, like in the corporate side, meaning for clients themselves. So I went and worked for one of my clients, actually. So I moved from Salt Lake to San Diego at one point, and I was working for Dexcom down in San Diego. My boss there was amazing. She took a chance on me, and I'm so happy that she did. She became my mentor, and I learned tons of skills from her that I use today. While I was down in San Diego, I got a call from this girl who I had met way back at E-Trade. She had left E-Trade years before I did. We stayed in touch. We became really good friends. She moved out to the Bay Area and she was working for different big companies here. And at this point, she was the boss at Netflix. So a position became open and she let me know about it. She reached out. I applied for the job. I didn't get it the first time, which was okay. But then again, she reached out the second time and I did get it the second time. But if I had not built that relationship with her years prior and stayed in touch with her professionally and as a friend, then I wouldn't have been able to have this opportunity to be here today. And with that comes just my last point, and I think it might be the most important, is taking action. Be bold about your decisions. No one is going to hand you anything. Like, you just have to take what's yours. As Latinas, we have to work twice as hard, but the reward comes twice as much, right? Because we have worked that hard. So just know that it's possible. Take a chance on yourself, but take action. Don't sit around and wait for things to happen, because they're not going to happen. They're not going to be handed to you. So yeah, I mean, this is way longer than you probably wanted, but the first is, don't be afraid to change course. Everyone's path is going to be different. build long-lasting relationships with your network, with people that you're interested in. Make sure you keep those relationships. And third is just take action, because no one is going to just hand you over anything. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Cynthia. I think, you know, I'm taking notes here too as I like learn from each of you, right? It's being not scared to pivot. Like I myself changed my major in college, I think like 5 times, like so many times. And I think it's not being scared of pivoting and not going where you originally thought you were going to be. And I love the relationship building point you brought up. Like I had a professor at grad school once tell me, people love talking about what they're passionate about, and just go ahead and make those relationships. I love that. So that brings me actually to networking and the importance of networking and platforms that we use to network. So Natalie, my next question is for you. What should we be doing on platforms like LinkedIn to get the most out of it and make sure that we're out there?
Yeah, so I think it's worth mentioning that I'm probably getting that question because I did work at LinkedIn, and it's actually where I decided that I wanted to work for mission-led companies, because again, it's about accessibility of economic opportunity. And I just can't think of, you know, had my mom been connected to so many people around the world, what she could have been able to accomplish with just that Latin entrepreneurial spirit that she had, that got her out of you know, the coast into all the opportunities that she encountered. Cynthia said a lot of stuff that I really loved around mentorship and taking chances. And I think everyone at some point will admit that a lot of your career is the relationships that you have, people taking chances on you and seeing you for the potential that you have, not necessarily for the experience that you have. And so I think LinkedIn is a digital way of doing that. I think of it as almost as your digital business card in a lot of ways. And so it's kind of up to you to make it what you want to tell the world. So Brittany talked about narrative earlier. I think that's really important, right? What are you trying to say with your bio? What are you trying to say with your picture? And these are things that people notice. I had a manager who is coincidentally a mentor of mine who used to look at someone's picture and just say, you can learn a lot about that person's energy from their picture. And so, you know, I'm not suggesting that it has to be a one size fits all, but what are you trying to say about the person that you are and how you connect? And beyond that, what I think the power of LinkedIn really is around looking for those mentors if they're not in your close network. And so, you know, now I think that you have like the green circles that say open to networking and that sort of thing. But what I always encourage people to do is look for people that you want to model yourselves after and try to reach out to them, you know, like send intros and just say, I'm just interested in picking your brain. I want to learn from your experience. I'm inspired, or I'm looking to do something similar. Would you be willing to spend 15, 20 minutes? If you're in the area, buy them coffee if you can, right? But I think that can go a long way. It's almost like job searching, where you might not get a ton of responses, but those that will respond will be invested typically, and you'll be able to get an advocate in a lot of ways, and if nothing else, someone that can give you some coaching. So networking at work can be difficult. Finding mentors can be difficult, and I strongly encourage everyone to leverage LinkedIn to try to reach outside of your direct, let's call them bubbles, and see if you can find people that are there to boost you forward.
Yeah, I love that. No, LinkedIn is such a powerful source and such a powerful tool. And I love that you say that, like, it's hard sometimes to network within your own community and in person, but LinkedIn just gives us that platform to be able to make it a little less intimidating. And so you pointed something like branding yourself and what you're looking for and kind of quote unquote how you kind of want to sell yourself. So that goes to my next question, Brittany, for you, because you're an expert on this. So how does one establish that personal brand that you not just want to put on LinkedIn, but social media and social media marketing is such a big thing right now? How would you say it's the best way to do that?
So before I get started, I just want to say that what Cynthia and Natalie said, I completely agree about taking action. To me, personal branding and like positioning yourself, that's all about empowering your own voice and owning your own narrative and owning your own story. So we all have personal brands, just for a context standpoint, whether you want one or not, at the most high level definition, because I think people think it's super squishy and I want anybody to ask any questions related to it. But your personal brand is your name. It is your reputation. It's what people think and feel about you when they hear about you or they find you online. And so the question isn't like, do you have one? It's whether you're the one in control of it. And it can be just such a vehicle. Like I'm here today because of content that I've put out online and interactions I've had with people I haven't even met in person. Because, like Natalie was saying, people make decisions based on what they find about you online, even based on a picture, whatever that might be. And I really do feel like, especially when you do get kind of used to putting yourself out there online, you know what it is about the person before you even meet them. You know what it's like to, you know, if you like someone off the bat from content that they put out. I think you can really feel that. So effective personal branding is actually really defined by you. Is your presence online helping move you toward your goals? Is it helping you meet the right people? Is it attracting the right opportunities that are relevant to you? Like, are you making it an asset? You, and in a post-COVID world, you have to be able to show your value and credibility and speak, own your voice in a remote world. Like it's not, we're not always going to be networking and shaking hands. Like I miss, honestly, like I love Q&A. It's weird to me that I can't like look in your eyes or know how people are responding or reacting. And the best thing about doing a lot of these panels is after the panel, you can go up and have an actual conversation with people. So now the best way to do it, if you're in the audience, I would say is to connect with people after, like go on LinkedIn, find my profile and be like, oh, I saw you at, Latinas event, Latinas in Tech event, and connect that way. And so I want to give some tips on how to actually establish the personal brand, but it is really important to take care of your brand, like at the very base level. And just my definition of an effective personal brand is a clear and consistent presence that serves, attracts, and cultivates a dedicated community. And when that's done right, the best personal brands, you really feel like you know that person without ever having met them. And it does take some time to get there, but once you get there, it's fantastic because it like eliminates right away whether somebody is for you or not. And that's the reason why like authenticity is so important, because the more authentic, and it does take practice being yourself online, that you can be, the easier it is to stay consistent if you're not forcing yourself to kind of pretend like you're some other type of person. So your overall goal with your personal brand should be an obvious hell yes to the people who are right for you and an obvious no to the people who aren't. So I have a free brand audit on my website if you want to go check that out and kind of check the boxes on like on your personal brand where it stands right now. But I just want to go through like four tips, thought starters, things to think about. Number one is personal branding is actually very intentional. I always say that influence isn't luck or talent, it's strategy. It's about positioning yourself. So when people think about personal branding, I think there usually isn't a goal in mind. I would suggest that you pick a 90-day goal. I like to have people pick a focus and one particular goal that you want your personal brand to help you achieve over the next 90 days. So since we're talking about networking, like at the end of 90 days, what would you like to happen? Like specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. I want to connect with 5 new people a week in my industry. I want to have at least 10 Zoom calls each month. Like make it very specific. Number 2, audience. It's a little counterintuitive, but your personal brand is not actually about you at all. It starts with you, but then it becomes all about your audience. I think people get really hung up on serving on like what's interesting about themselves. And it's really about the people you're trying to attract and positioning yourself for them. So who specifically do you want to be networking with? And the more specific that you can be, the easier it's going to be to position yourself to attract the people you want. Like I'm talking like really specific, like one person in like one ideal person in mind. I have students do this and it sounds super, again, counterintuitive, like it's going to alienate a bunch of people. But if you have one person that you're speaking to, it honestly makes it easier. So it's not enough to say like, I want to meet other Latinas in tech. Like I want you to have very specifically What does this person do for work? What specific job title do they have? Where do they live? What do they like to do? What are they doing right now? Are they someone who'd be on this, on this panel right now? And just keep in mind that it's going to evolve and change, but I want you to like focus. It's really important. So that way, again, it's an obvious yes or no. And then the third thing I'd encourage you to think about is just this isn't so much of this is something to like actually sit with. If the ideal person that you were just thinking about found you online right now, in an ideal world, what are the 3 adjectives that you would want them to use to describe you? Like, do you know what those are? And if you don't, that's something to be thinking about. And part 2 of that question is, if they actually came across you today, like right now, I went to your LinkedIn profile, I went to your Twitter, I went to your Instagram, whatever it is, are those the words that they would use? And if not, why not? And just to start thinking about what you need to be putting out there to get people to know, like, and trust you, because your goal is to be bridging that gap. And that gets easier after you start actually talking to people. And I know I'm going a little long, so I'm just going to give my 4th point. And this is making it clear and easy for people to connect with you. You never want your audience to do the work. Is it clear and obvious, like right off the bat, if I go to whatever profile, who you are, what you do, who you do it for, what problem you solve, or the value that you add, and how best to contact you? You actually have no idea how many people have great bios, they spend all this time on their picture, they do all these things, and then you go to their website and there's no contact form. There's no email me. In their bio on Instagram, it's like, do I DM you? Do I email you? What do you want me to do? So just like top level, who you are, what you do, how to reach out to you. So that way, when you are reaching out to people, it just makes it easy, because if you make people do the work, they're not going to do it. You just need to make it an easy yes. So I would always be approaching it from, who's the person I want to reach? How do I make it an easy yes? I think that's, I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but probably went long.
Yeah. No, you're good. I love all of that. I love that. Those are all great tips to have, right? How we want to quote unquote kind of market ourselves. And that comes with your own self-identity and realizing what it is that you want to identify yourself with. So I love that. Thank you so much, Brittany. My last question that we have pre-generated before we move on to Q&A is for you, Chelsea. You work at Podium, which is an interaction platform, right, with local businesses and making sure that they're being well taken care of and they're part of this tech industry that we're in and that interaction with customers. Where should we be networking? Where should we be putting ourselves, kind of how you're identifying all these local businesses, us as individuals, besides the awesome platform that we've already talked about? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, great question. And first of all, thank you to all of the panelists for sharing their incredible experiences with us. It's so many great words of wisdom shared. So thank you. And I think, traditionally it's, networking starts with your circle and your community. And growing up, I didn't know anyone in tech, let alone that it was even an industry that I could be a part of. And one of the coolest jobs I remember, someone in my community having was actually a close friend of my mom. And she worked at the Marriott and she'd let us use her family discount, which honestly were the only times we were even able to afford to go on vacation. So when we were able to take advantage of that perk, I was elated about it. And I thought her job was incredible. And, that was my first example at how powerful, networking could be. And I want to touch on some principles today on how to maximize your network. So as we're, thinking of places to network, the initial go-tos, are typically meetups, conferences, incredible workshops like these. And these all provide unique opportunities, to level up, learn, and meet other folks in the industry. And I'd like to highlight one place in particular, though, which most people see as the destination, but it's just the beginning. And that's a job you've landed now. So the reason I highlight this is because of the accessibility and trajectory of growth that you can achieve. So, the colleagues that you're working with today will be the ones that can level you up in your current job. But let's be honest, folks find different opportunities. And when they're looking for a talented person to join their team, they're going to bring you up. And an incredible thing about tech is that we have, these very specialized teams with diverse skill sets, working towards this end goal. And this means that we all have the fantastic opportunity to really challenge, level up, and learn from one another cross-functionally, which is really powerful. And, how do we do that? And, I'd start with, showing up and doing your best work, because you never know who's watching. And, whether you're in school or you just landed your first job in tech, people notice those who do great work. And it's those folks who are going to think of you when new opportunities arise. And something else that you can also use to your advantage is to be your best advocate. You're the one that knows your strengths and weaknesses and goals. And, even the best managers, I'll let you in on a little secret, are not mind readers. So I encourage you to share your interests with your managers, because a stellar manager is going to challenge you with the opportunities you need to achieve your goals. I also invite you to create your own opportunities. Like, imagine that you have a skill you want to level up. Schedule time with a colleague to pick their brain and learn from them. Part of my job that I really enjoy is research and needing to understand problems. And so that often leads me to having conversations with folks from support and sales and customer success who are incredible at their jobs and provide me with insight that helps me do my job better. And don't be afraid to ask for what you want. So if you have a colleague that you respect and you want to learn from, ask to be on projects that they're working on. This creates an opportunity for growth through like an insider's perspective on those little intricacies that make them unique. And my last point would be, learn from your leaders. If any execs or, in the C-suite or leaders, offer office hours, take advantage. And if they don't, it never hurts to reach out. A little story about this is our CPO opened up office hours. And from the beginning, I was very intrigued, but something about it was a bit intimidating. And it actually wasn't until his EA reached out in a private DM to all of the women in the department that didn't, directly report to him. And she let us know that not a single woman had reached out to schedule office hours with him. And I was just like, whoa, talk about the disparity and not taking advantage of opportunities. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start scheduling, weekly office hours with him. And just the vast amount of knowledge that I was able to become privy to will be lessons I will take with me forever. And your career, it's going to be a ride of a lifetime. Networking and learning is just something that's never going to end. But I've found the most success when I have been out of my comfort zone. And, if you take each new job and position as a challenge to just soak up as much as you can, it will position you as someone that others want to work with. It'll broaden your exposure and strengthen your weaknesses and just, end up resulting in a just really fast growing career trajectory.
I love that. I love all the points that you brought up. I really love the whole sharing with your leadership and what your interests are, right? A good leader will encourage that. A good leader will say, how can I help you bring those skills into work so that you're always happy and fulfilled? And I see this common trend against a lot of what we're talking about, right? This fear, not letting that hold you back and realizing that you can do it. And it's being your best advocate and cheering yourself on. So thank you, Chelsea. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
We have some really good questions in the Q&A. Let's go over to them and see which ones we can answer. A lot of them are just super interesting. I was reading here a couple of them. Let's go ahead and see. Brittany, I think there's one for you in here. How would you recommend, and this is from Christine. Hi, Christine. How would you recommend someone to brand themselves when they're still learning more about what they want to do?
I love this because I think there's this misconception that you need to be some kind of expert in order to position yourself online. I actually think it is such an advantage. If you have a ton of experience, that can be used as an advantage. And if you don't have a ton of experience, your curiosity, your energy, your drive, your interest, there are a million things you can be talking about. And when you're on the hiring side, like as far as even in my business, I'm constantly looking for people who like have potential, who have it, who might not even be there yet, but I can see it in them. And people who are hungry and just interested in the industry, like who are up on industry news, sharing what they've learned, doing like just talking about different trends and how they're trying to grow, you know, within that industry. I love that sort of content, and that gets employers excited. That gets people really excited to network with you, because then you want to network with people who are actually excited. You know, like it's such proof that you're actually excited and that you're willing to put in the work. So I actually think it's a real advantage if you're not necessarily like, in quotes, expert. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's so true. One of these questions that was on here, I just thought about Natalie right away, because it's asking how to follow on networking on long distance. Like, we're in Utah, Natalie's in London, a whole different time zone, yet she's here with us. So how have you found that balance, like being able to network with people that are in different places?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenge. Time zone, I think, is probably the first thing that comes to mind. But I mean, this all started with a friend of mine in San Francisco putting me in touch with the folks that were opening the London chapter, which led to this opportunity. And so what comes to mind to me when you're asking this question is something that both Chelsea and Cynthia mentioned, is like taking risks and going outside of your comfort zone and being bold. So, you know, I think everyone sort of touched on the theme of like trying to stand out, but through authenticity, right? And trying to basically extend a hand to someone to say, hey, I'm interested in you because I think we have a connection. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, I think you don't want to force things. It's probably not going to be a good use of your time or their time. And it's not all connections are going to lend to something, right? But it does take more effort when you're not in person. That's for sure. And that's the unfortunate reality. But I think just being focused on what you want, and that's also a theme that Brittany said around branding, right? Just kind of having an idea, being focused, pursuing it, and just having that clear vision for yourself, you'll end up manifesting things for yourself. So long story short, it's definitely a more challenging environment to meet people, to connect with people, and to network with people. But it's as good a time as any to do it, because we do need the connection, first of all. I think we can all agree on that. And if it's not the right time, it's not the right time, but you will end up finding people that want to connect with you as well.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, right? Like finding people that want to network with you as well. There's a question here from Lauren that Chelsea or Cynthia, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. How do you recommend leading without authority? So using networking to influence others within your own company.
Ooh, that's a really great question. So leading without authority. Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, totally. So how would you recommend leading without authority? Let's say you're not in a manager position, you're not in a leadership role, but you want to set an example, right? So using that network that you have, not just within your own company, but in your community, how can you use that to influence others, not just within your company, but with your community?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You know, I strongly believe that like you don't need to have the title of leader or manager to be one, you know, and it's like you can very much start small to be able to like one day get to that, you know, leadership position that you do want and desire for. And it's just like, and I think starting small also starts preparing you for those lessons that you're going to be implementing as a leader, right? So it's like, I guess like in work, you know, if you within like start with like within your team, you know, like if you have an idea on how you can implement a new process or a new initiative that is going to create value and generate new business and growth for your company, it does, whether you're a leader or an individual contributor, that is important. And people will notice, kind of taking initiative to, generate these new ideas. And then as you continue to do that, I think people will kind of see you as a go-to of like, do you know what? I'm going to go talk to that person because they're always down to talk, new ideas and brainstorm. And I know they'll be able to kind of like help propel my idea, so it's just like kind of planting these little seeds and, creating these opportunities for you to start strengthening those leadership muscles, I think will really help. And then as far as just like within the community, there's so much opportunity, I think, especially, with underrepresented communities of, reaching out to people that, have, one day the goal to be in the position that you are today, and kind of reaching out and teaching and learning and from each other, so it's just like, I think just kind of creating those opportunities for yourself and not necessarily, thinking that you need to have the title in order to do so.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cynthia, is there anything that you'd like to add to that? That was wonderful, Chelsea. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chelsea hit it right on Nelly. It's one thing that I had one of my bosses tell me at one point is, if you want to be a manager at one point, you have to start acting like one. So it goes along what Chelsea just said. Like, you might have to take on projects and take on things and lead those projects before you actually have that title. But that also builds your skills, right? So that's, you're leading a project without having that manager title in there. But yeah, I mean, I think Chelsea did a great job.
No, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Cynthia.
Could I add
there's a
something
couple
to that,
of questions.
actually?
Oh, of course, Natalie. Yes, of course.
Yeah, two things very quickly. I think the leading by example thing is a great way to think about that. And just think, I'm sorry, I like to compare things to sports because that's what I know best, but there's plenty of athletes that you can recognize as leaders that aren't captains of their teams. And they're just the people that you recognize through their behavior. And I would encourage people to, if they're not a lead or they're not a manager, to act like a leader by example. People notice those actions much more than they notice what you promise you're going to do. And then the second thing that Cynthia mentioned, I love the idea of taking on more projects and stepping into that role, right? It's sort of like dress for the job that you want type of thing. Although in the tech industry, everyone dresses like they don't want to have a job. So there's also that flip side. But what I will say is do it carefully, because I found myself in situations where I was carrying a workload of several people. And I felt like I became sort of like the office secretary / assistant / lead. And just have your boundaries and know what you're willing to do. And it's a give and take, right? Yes, I'll do this project for you. Do you envision me stepping into a role like this, or am I just taking on your burden? And that can be a really good leverage for you to have the career conversations that you want for yourself.
No, I totally agree. I love that. Thank you, Natalie. There's a question in here that will address a couple of people that have actually asked this question that I have a lot of passion for, and I'd love for you all to share what your thoughts on this. People that are passionate about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I think, it's a big issue all over, like every industry. Tech has it too. And, how do we make sure that we have the skills and the knowledge to grow to have a seat in that decision-making table? What can we do better to support our Latina team members? If you are not Latina, how can you be a voice and an advocate for raising diversity and inclusion in the workplace? It's a good one.
It is a good one. I just want, real quickly, since you want all of us to talk, I'll be short, but I think the biggest thing is being involved. Like, be involved in the different things that your company holds, right? When I mean, coming from a finance world where it's very much like, I don't know, like New York finance stuff, like E-Trade is just, I was the only woman on my team for a long time, and I was the only brown person for a long time. So it was just going from that to coming to a company like Netflix, who holds events for a whole month, that it's like for Hispanic Heritage Month, it was just like, whoa, you know, like it's crazy, it's mind blowing. But it's just, at first I was a little bit intimidated. I was like, do I get involved? Like, is this, you know, so it's like just being involved, like these type of events, for example, is being able to be here and make a community, get involved with people, like be open to having conversations and asking questions. One thing that I have learned is people love talking about themselves. So if you ask questions and you're interested in them, you can learn so much, and you build communities that way, and you can get people involved. Like, you'll be surprised of how much people know. So it's just being involved in overall, like, community, at work, being supportive of people's events, that when they hold events, I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've taken from my experience from going from a company or a place that like hardly had any brown people really, to a company that like celebrates that, right? So that's it.
Do we have any other participants on this question? I think you did a really good job, Cynthia.
I'll jump in. I'm not in an organization.
Sorry,
oh, sorry. Well, I'll make mine quick then. I know I'm not in an organization anymore, but part of that is because I've been the only woman in a lot of rooms. I've been the only brown person in a lot of rooms. Sometimes it's one of those things where I know that I hadn't talked about being Latina that much because I knew it made other people uncomfortable. And then I'm the person that's bringing up race and kind of all of those kinds of conversations where it's like, I'm just gonna, you know, keep my mouth shut and do a good job. And maybe that'll speak for itself, when really that really wasn't moving the needle. That was doing everyone a disservice. And that's something that I've come to terms with. And now, you know, building my own brand, and well, now I have my own business, I definitely see that, you know, sharing my opinion, sharing my voice, speaking about these issues, speaking about these things helps empower other people to speak about these things. Because it's really hard when you're the only brown person and then they look to you, or then you feel like you have to, you know, answer for literally everybody in other races as well, when I'm not qualified to speak for anyone else other than myself and my own experience. So I think having other allies who are educating themselves on that, and if you work for a company who are trying to be more diverse or have that as part of the values, and making sure that that's another thing. It's like, make sure that you're very clear on your values, and the people that you're networking with, make sure that those people are also aligned with your values. Look at the companies they work at. Are they doing things that you're like, oh yeah, they're actually taking care of this, or they want to be involved or inclusive? I think that's part of the larger conversation. It's even putting it out there. I saw things, I think one of the top questions was, I'd love to hear how anyone has used being a Latina to their advantage for their benefit, whether landing a job or just networking. The corporate world is one of those things where they love the diversity, but then inside it's a different story. But yes, if you should use, everyone in here should be using their Latinness to their advantage. And it is an advantage. It really is. Like, I know it shouldn't in quotes be that way, but it is an advantage. Let people know, like, put that you attended this event, put like, that should be on your LinkedIn. It's now part of, I actually went and changed my bios because my name doesn't, you don't know necessarily by my name what I might be, and I don't necessarily look Latina to people. And so putting it out there has changed a lot. Actually, in order to even be on this panel, I was having a conversation with somebody that had a different panel. They didn't know I was Latina, and then they knew about this event, and then they made the introduction. They were like, oh, I didn't know. So if you're not talking about it, you might be missing out on opportunities to actually have really valuable conversations like this. Sorry, I went long with that rant.
I love that you called it a rant. I thought it was pretty inspirational, actually. The only thing I was going to add is that, like, as leaders, we do have an opportunity also to show people that they matter, and there can be very small gestures that can help people own that space that we're talking about in the workplace. And so I think people will typically think that I'm a fairly confident person, which I think I am, but there's definitely, the workplace throws everyone out of their comfort zone, no matter how you kind of show up in that space. And big difference between work environments have been how my managers have held a space for me. And so some of the best managers I've had, sometimes when I was being challenged in a way that was very clear, I wasn't being seen or like appreciated as like a peer, they would just step in and be like, that is not what this conversation is about. Or just a small interruption to show like, hey, can we show this person as much respect as we've shown others around this table? And for me, like, that earns my loyalty in a lot of ways. And that's a place where I want to be. And so I agree completely with a lot of the statements here that a lot of companies feel like the buzzword of diversity is advantageous. So I would encourage you to find spaces where it's more than a buzzword and you see these small actions. Like, I think small actions is what generates those changes. And it's rare, sadly, to find those managers that step up, but they're out there. So if it's not a manager, find yourself a leader that will do that for you. And that boosts confidence like nothing else.
I agree 100%. Actually walking the walk as a company and as leaders. I love that, Natalie. Thank you. So we're coming close on our time, and I just want to say thank you. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. Before we move on, talking about walking the walk, I actually would love to introduce one of our community partners, Luke Maki, who's the CEO and founder of Mentorly, to give us a glimpse of what his company is about and what he's been working on to increase these diversity and inclusion efforts. So Luke, I'm excited to have you here and chat a little bit about what it is that you're doing. Might be having some technical difficulties. We'll have Luke here in a couple seconds.
Luke, can you raise your hand, please?
I think Luke is now in the panel side. Luke, can you hear us? I put your video on.
I can. Hey, how's it going? Oh my goodness, my computer literally just turned off as soon as you introduced me. Nightmare moment. But I am so excited to be here. I can't switch my video on right now, so I'll just speak to you this way. But it's so cool to see so many people that I look up to here on the panel and talking about how to leverage networking to increase your chances of landing a great job. That's essentially what Mentorly is here to do. We built Mentorly so that we could help underrepresented talents increase their chances of landing at an amazing employer. And the way that we're doing that is every month we have amazing events to support underrepresented talents and introduce them to these awesome employers. So we just had an event with Hackbright Academy with 20 employers that came through to talk to them. And here in a couple weeks, we've got this amazing virtual career fair with Latinas in tech. And we're going to be bringing tons of amazing companies to meet with you and to talk about what it's like to work there. The recruiters will be on the line, so you can go ahead and chat to them, ask them questions similar to how we're doing in today's event. And yeah, we're just fired up to have you all there. If you could, Cynthia, post the link. I sent it to you over email to the event in the chat. It'd be awesome to get everyone here registered and rocking and rolling, so we can so we can have you all there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. We really appreciate you being here and appreciate all the things that Mentorly is doing. We really are grateful for our local tech company partners. Again, we thank you all for joining us today and thank all the panelists for joining us today. This is a really good conversation around networking, and I'm excited to see you at whatever next event we have here in the couple months. Feel free to register for a profile at latinasintech.org so that you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and we're just so grateful for all of you and hope you have a great day.